Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for Mercury and Capricorn in the natal chart. And Mercury is a planet of communication. So how we talk to others, how we listen, which is how we take in information from others, but also how do we stimulate our mind and what do we think about? All of these things are connected. It's like the way your mind works, you could say, is also Mercury. And Capricorn is a cardinal earth sign. So Capricorn in the astrological chart rules the 10th house, which deals with career matters. And Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and therefore Capricorn is a sign that's associated with tradition. It's associated with, ambition, career. It is serious. It is disciplined. It is organized. So a person with Mercury in Capricorn will have this type of mind or mindset. And this means that they come to life with a very practical mentality. There's a realistic type of attitude towards whatever they encounter. And so they see things from a very realistic point of view. A Mercury in Capricorn individual will tend to be very economic in their speech. So unlike maybe a Mercury in Sagittarius or Mercury in Gemini, both signs which tend to be quite excessive sometimes in their speech patterns, the Mercury in Capricorn person, because of that conservative, and you think of the word conserve, means keeping, keeping to a minimum of Saturn, that conservative nature. Mercury in Capricorn will tend to be a man or woman of few words. And it's not that they, won't talk at all, but they want to make sure that what they say is to the point. So they're very careful in their speech. They're not frivolous. Okay, so they don't like to talk about silly things. They like to talk about things that to them have value and that they feel have a sense of purpose. Because the sign of Capricorn is about having a sense of purpose. That is how they approach life itself, is having goals and moving towards those goals. Because Capricorn is a cardinal sign, there's a take charge, active, proactive, I should say, type of a mentality as well, where the person is actively seeking out things. So it could be seeking out knowledge, not being passive, not waiting for something to come to them. And so this is the mind that is always strategizing, always planning. And therefore, they are thinking ahead. They're not just like living in the moment. Definitely because Saturn is a planet of old age. So it talks about the future in a sense, what are you going to do now in your future? You can't live in the moment. You have to think about in your old age, that Saturn is connected to. And so the Mercury in Capricorn individual, even if they have a sun sign in Sagittarius, which can sometimes be quite capricious, I think, and just kind of like freewheeling, that they may be more serious in their mindset than the typical Sagittarian. They may actually think before they speak. And one of the things, too, that I think is kind of interesting, because if you think about debating and some people being very skilled at debates, what is a good quality of a debater? One of them, I feel, when I've observed people even like political types of pundits, for instance, is that they don't get emotional. And this is how Mercury in Capricorn is. So you think of somebody who is arguing or debating with another person on TV, and one person gets triggered by what the other person says. They've already lost the debate, or two politicians during a debate. The person who gets emotional and they lose their objective, so to speak, and then sometimes they will insult the other person, or and that's due to their emotion rather than the sheer logic of the situation. They're the ones that will be seen later as having lost the debate. Mercury in Capricorn, again, they are not coming from an emotional place. Now, this is very important because a Mercury in Capricorn person can appear kind of cold in their speech because there's a clipped tone sometimes where the person is they're trying to get to the point. They're trying to cut to the chase. And so if they're talking to somebody, the other person may think this person is kind of dissing me, or maybe this person is not really, they don't really like me. And it can give the wrong impression for somebody who's more of a warm type of an individual, like a fire sign, such as a Leo. And that person may feel offended, may feel that the Mercury in Capricorn individual is a cold fish, or that they are being somehow kicked to the curb, dissed. But it's simply that the Mercury in Capricorn person is economic. They don't believe in waste, even when it comes, well, I was thinking of Capricorn, but when it comes to words, they want to make the most of what they're saying. And they, thinking about it in terms of a give and take situation, a Mercury in Capricorn person would probably get easily irritated and bored by having a long drawn out conversation with someone, especially if it was small talk, but also if the other person was very verbose and, that uses a lot of flowery language and is kind of meandering. The Mercury in Capricorn person might get kind of abrupt with that person and bring it back to the subject at hand, but in the process alienate that person who feels slighted, who feels like the other person is disinterested in them, is, whatever. And taken too far, especially if Mercury is afflicted, which means that it's forming hard angles with other planets. For instance, Mercury to Saturn or something like that, which is funny because we're talking about Capricorn, the sign that it rules. But that could indicate that the person actually has cruel speech, where they are really so divorced from sensitivity that they lack the emotions to understand the impact of their language on another person. So if they're in a work environment, they could be the one who is the hatchet man, who fires people, and they wouldn't really skip a beat. And, one thing I should have said at the beginning of this is that Mercury can never be far from your sun. So if you're listening and you know that you have Mercury in Capricorn, your sun is probably in Capricorn, or the sign before it, which is Sagittarius, or Aquarius. So if you have the sun in Capricorn, this is especially important for you to understand the impact of your words. Try to be more willing to let your hair down, so to speak, in your conversations. Don't be too controlled. I think sometimes with the cardinal signs that there is a controlling nature inherent within them. And they like to run the show. They like to kind of, if they're having a conversation, kind of control the conversation, control the dialogue. And also understand that people have feelings and that you have to say things in a sensitive manner, that you can't just state things that are very uncomfortable without kind of having a little bit of compassion for how people will receive this information, because you want to make sure that you're not being too remote and hardened in that particular way, because you have that double Capricorn influence. Now, this could be especially in the workplace, because if your sun is also in Capricorn, you may be like very business-minded and very much about the bottom line. And if you have to fire somebody, so be it. Well, understand that that person, even if you think that that person hasn't done a good job, you have to be diplomatic. You have to be able to, soften your approach, perhaps. If your sun sign is in Sagittarius, watch out for mixed messages. You may give the impression of being very gregarious, and then your speech is very clipped. And people may wonder, was it something I said? I thought they were going to, indulge me in this long conversation. They seem like an interesting person, but they're all business. I do think that this can actually be a very good balance, though, for Sag, because Sagittarians are ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter can be excessive. And, because Saturn is so economical, it's a good mix. And it can make the mind more disciplined for a Sagittarian and more regimented. And that can't hurt for Sag. Speaking as a sun in Sagittarius, that can be a good thing. Although I have Mercury in Sagittarius too. And okay, so if your sun sign is in Aquarius, this can lend a more traditional viewpoint. This is something that I didn't see in what I read, and I just want to make this point as well, is that I believe that people with Mercury and Capricorn will tend to adopt traditional ideas. And this, I think that one thing that can be a bit problematic is having the tendency to believe somebody because they have certain letters after their name that indicate they are professionals in this area or that area, and they are the experts, quote unquote. And this is because, Capricorn is a sign that loves hierarchy and, the food chain, and who has the credentials to dare speak on a certain topic. And this can be a drawback if the person is too much enamored by the status of the individual that they are taking their information from or advice from. Because I believe that at the end of the day, we have to really think for ourselves. And that is really, to me, the purpose of Mercury, is to filter out all of the disinformation, but also bring in our own intuitive gifts and the capability we have to take in messages maybe from a higher source to inform our decisions in this world. And if we are listening too much to these worldly experts, we may disregard our own intuition that kind of contradicts that. And then we end up going against our better judgment. And so because Aquarius is such an intuitive sign to begin with, there needs to be that understanding that you cannot always just go with somebody because they are supposed to be an expert, that you must balance your own intuitive hits about a certain situation and decide what's best for you. And also just the tendency to gravitate towards the conservative ideas. And, that's kind of funny because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which is about, nonconformity and even being future-minded. And Capricorn and Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, but also, by the way, the ruler of Aquarius. Some people don't realize that Aquarius is ruled by that. They will have a tendency to be, Aquarians tend to be more interested in far out ideas, things that, are not in the mainstream. But if an Aquarian sun sign has Mercury in Capricorn, they may gravitate towards the tried and true against their better judgment sometimes. So there has to be a balance. Now, speaking about the way that a Mercury in Capricorn talks, in addition to being serious and maybe not talking that excessively, they may even use language that we would consider archaic. And I was like joking with myself, and I was going to say, using terms maybe like the bee's knees or something like that. I don't know. So if you are somebody with Mercury in Capricorn and you love those old timey kind of sayings, please comment below. But there's also, like, when you were a child, you may have had delayed speech, and that is probably because Saturn rules delays and obstacles. So there might have been some kind of an impediment to speech in a timely manner. It came late. It can be, too, that the person is kind of pessimistic in their speech, where they tend to, or maybe thoughts. I don't know if they would necessarily say negative things all the time, but they may tend to, be more glass half empty in an attempt to be realistic. And they may even use the term, well, I want to be realistic about this situation, and be less hopeful that something is going to be going to work out in their favor or in somebody else's favor. So if it's like a parent to a child, not just getting carried away in the moment and encouraging their wild dreams, but saying you should be realistic about your chances in this or that situation. Well, I don't think there's anything wrong in being kind of tempered in one's expectations, because I do think sometimes people are unrealistic. It's simply when it almost veers into the negative that it might be construed that way with other people, where they might say, boy, this person is kind of a Debbie Downer, where they're always looking at the potential obstacles of this situation and not seeing the fact that they could happen. This is a good position for somebody who works in a government, I don't know if I'd say governmental capacity, or a corporate environment, because, just like we talk about hierarchies with Capricorn, wanting to, the different levels of things. And so there's an ability to kind of give orders out, and also like somebody who is a strategizer, who is giving orders, organizing what happens, and doing so with different compartments, and which corporations have that structure. Saturn is all about structure, and governments as well. They have their own structures and hierarchies, and Mercury in Capricorn fits right into that scene. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this, and if you'd like a private reading, natal chart reading, for instance, there's a link below for that. Thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.